To the show. My name's Dr. Steve Simpson, and I'm an elite performance mind coach, and I only work with elite performers. So, of course, as from previous shows, you know, I work with people just like you. Now, I think we've got a great show for you this evening. We've got a number of questions already in the bank, and you're not too late to fire another one in. Type in your question in the box, and I'll do my best to answer it in the next 30 minutes. So we're going to talk today about mindfulness and meditation and why they are so important. In the last two shows, I mentioned Carl Jung's views on synchronicity, a meaningful coincidence, as he called it. And in the last show, I talked about Carl Jung's views on the collective unconscious. And if you didn't see either of these two shows, you might want to check them out in the future. But for tonight, I'm going to talk about how we can, why mindfulness and meditation are so important is that they allow us to connect to the massive, massive power of the unconscious mind that we struggle with in today's society to connect with. And there's a number of reasons that, we have such busy, frantic lives, and that doesn't help. So these two subjects can be incredibly important in unlocking the potential that you have inside you, which you all almost certainly are hugely underestimating. And when I work with elite performers, this is the difference, because they've got probably the same potential that you have, but they know how to get into the place that they call the zone quicker and to stay there longer. So how did I first get interested in meditation? Well, I was a medical student. So as you can tell, that was probably quite a few years ago. And at that time in the mid-70s, transcendental meditation was a very popular new thing that was taking over Hollywood and many other places as well. It was called TM. And I, for some reason or another, got sucked into the TM and went on, I think it was 3 or 4 days training. And as for a student, it cost me quite a lot of money. But looking back, I can say that it was the best investment I've ever made, because I've been meditating ever since. And I'm in no doubt at all that it's helped me get my mind in a much better place than it would have been if I'd been left to my own devices. So what is the definition of mindfulness? Because that's a newer technique. And I should say right at the beginning, I think this might be alluded to in some of the questions I come on to, I don't see a huge amount of difference between meditation and mindfulness. They're all ways of getting us into the know, slowing down our thinking, finding that tranquil place where, as some poet or philosopher said, the truth can speak. Because that's the connection to the unconscious. That's where all of those wonderfully, massively creative thoughts come from. And that's when they can surface. So in this book, I plug this every week, get lucky now, 7 Secrets of Successful People. Chapter 4, Mindfulness. I'll just read what I wrote about mindfulness. This is an Apple Pages dictionary definition. A mental state achieved by focusing one's awareness on the present moment while calmly acknowledging and accepting one's feelings, thoughts, and bodily sensations, used as a therapeutic technique. Now, are you doing this at the moment? Does all this make sense to you? Calmly accepting one's feelings, thoughts, and bodily sensations? I hope you are, but most of us aren't. But it's the last few words that really interested me. Used as a therapeutic technique. So there's no question there in the Apple definition, or probably in any other dictionary definition of mindfulness, that it is a therapeutic technique. And that is why it's increasingly being rolled out in schools and even prisons. And I think we can all benefit from being more mindful, because there's never been a time when it's been harder to be mindful, as I mentioned, with all of the constant distractions, many of them from our favorite electronic devices. In general, when I'm addressing a group and I'm talking about mindfulness, they say, what do we have to do? And I say, well, the good news is you don't have to do anything, because you just have to go back to how you were as a baby and how you were as a child, because that's mindfulness. Somewhere along the way on your journey, you became less mindful. And I don't know how old it might have been. It could have been very young, or it could have been more recently. Who knows? But what is clear is that apart from the benefits of connecting to your unconscious mind to find that perfect mind state that releases your potential, there's also some very direct health benefits. And these comments, of course, particularly apply to meditation as well. So what are they? There's plenty of evidence to show that people who are mindful or who meditate regularly, they have less heart disease, they have, in general, lower blood pressure, less stomach problems like irritable bowel syndrome and things like that. And in general, they have less stress, which of course is hugely important. I mean, we all complain of being under stress, but we forget the dangers of stress. Stress is due to adrenaline, and it's when you're a caveman and you're faced with a saber-toothed tiger and you have to decide whether you're going to kill the tiger with your bare hands or run away. So it gears your body for that reaction. But the trouble is that if we're in stressful jobs or stressful family situations or relationships or something, then we go through exactly the same physiological response, but there's no saber-toothed tiger to wrestle with. We're basically usually wrestling with a telephone or a computer or with a boss who doesn't understand how wonderful and sensitive we are. So that adrenaline continues to surge through the body, and it does all kinds of things, like because the energy can't be burned off, the energy is some fats that have been broken down instead of being burnt to provide energy settle in the arteries, clogging up the blood supply to our brain and our hearts, and we don't want that, do we? So there we are, less stress, and the world would definitely be a better place if we could all learn to be less stressful. So meditation. How do we meditate? Well, I told you I went on this TM course, and what they told me, they whispered in my ear so that nobody else could hear, this is your secret mantra. And when you're meditating with your eyes closed, you say this in your head over and over and over again. And you must never, ever tell anybody what that word is. And so far, I never have. But I have to say I'm becoming increasingly tempted. And so that's the way that I learned meditation. Nobody at that time mentioned breathing. But since then, I've come across a variety of very useful techniques, breathing techniques, and HeartMath is just one of them. And there is no question that for people who've been breathing all of their lives, we are not doing it very well sometimes. So why do I say that? Again, it's physiological. When we're under stress, the adrenaline is going around and the body's preparing, so we start to breathe faster and faster and faster. And because of that, they're shallower and shallower and shallower. So we're not moving a lot of that stale air. And because of that, we go into a spiral of increased pulse rate and all the rest of it. So we're experiencing a fear reaction, really, when probably there's nothing to fear at all. So how do you stay calm? Well, just like mindfulness is your natural default state, to be calm is your natural default state. So you just do the opposite. If you're in a hunched up closed position, frowning and all the rest of it, you just relax and you adopt a more upright position so that the air can go into your lungs. And you also consciously breathe more slowly, because if you breathe more slowly, you're going to inflate the lower parts of your lungs. And as I'm describing this, you will notice that I am, without thinking about it, automatically breathing more slowly too. So just to give you a very quick example of something that you could try on the breathing technique, and it's a very simple HeartMath technique. Well, I don't think HeartMath claimed to have invented it. I think it's pretty universal. But when you are sitting or lying on your bed, relaxing, breathing and counting in your breath, count in your head from 1 to 5. Breathing in, counting 1 to 5. And then breathing out, again, counting 1 to 5. And unless you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, automatically that is going to slow your breathing to something much closer to a physiological norm. Now, I've just got a couple of questions that have popped up on my the screen here, and I better check them in case I need to do anything right now. Laura. Oh dear, problem with the webinar not connecting. Sorry about that, Laura. Sometimes it's like that. And what I have found from experience is that you get the best results here from using Google or Firefox. I know that I normally run Safari as my browser, and it doesn't seem to work well. So I'm sorry, Laura. I'm sure your catch is on the download. I'm particularly sorry because you've actually put in a fantastic question, and you also volunteered to be on the open mic, and it would have been great to have you. So I'm sorry that didn't work out, but don't worry, we're going to have loads more opportunities for you and for anybody else who wants to post their live question. So where were we? I was talking about breathing and mantras, which are of benefit, but I think I won't say I found something better, but I think I've found something simpler that I think works just as well. And before I get on to that, let me give you 3 examples of instances where people or animals are showing extreme mindfulness and evidence of being in an altered medical state that would be very close, if not actually meditation. Choose a household pet that you may have one of these yourself, or if you don't, you'll certainly know what it is. And they are cats. And cats, you love them or loathe them, I suppose. And if you're not particularly interested in thinking about a cat, well, then think of a cat in the natural state, something like a lion or a tiger, because it's exactly the same thing. Now, when you see a cat in the garden and it's in hunting mode, it's obviously smelt something or seen something in the long grass. What does it do? It goes absolutely still, and it may even have one paw up in the air, and it doesn't move. Its eyes aren't moving. If there's any movement at all that might be giving itself away, there'll be a tiny little movement of the tail. It's almost like it can't control that because it's excited. But it is staring at whatever has taken its attention. And if this is sort of like a target of interest for it, it will then slowly take the next step. And sooner or later, it will pounce. And fortunately, these things are well balanced in nature. Whatever it was hunting, a little mouse or something, is very likely to escape, because lions in the wild don't kill many prey compared to how many they try to. And I suppose it's the same with cats, although I'm not particularly an expert on that. But it's the mindfulness, it's that focus, that unifocus, that simplicity and minimalism of action, because all the thought is on one source. Another one that I use, which I love, I love babies. We all do. Actually, we're programmed to do so. That's not a surprise. But they also hugely interest me from the psychological developmental viewpoint. And there's a certain age when babies' brains must be at their most receptive, and everything in their new environment is of massive interest and fascination to them. And particularly other people, because they're trying to make out all the different sizes and shapes that we adults are, or even other babies for that matter. And the intensity of a baby's stare. You can be in a cafe and you just turn your head and you see this baby, and it is just focused on you. And its eyes aren't blinking. And that, to me, is pure mindfulness. That baby is soaking in and analyzing at an unconscious level all of these things that are happening in its environment. And another example, and I only really thought about this a few days ago when I found somebody doing it. Imagine going into a coffee bar or somewhere like that, or imagine, I don't know, being at home, having a morning coffee with your partner or whatever. Now, there's a certain pose that people sometimes take when they're having their cup of tea or coffee, and it's this. They have the cup raised often, and their eyes are unfocused and glazed, and their eyes just aren't moving. They've gone basically into their own little world. They obviously are enjoying the moment of coffee, but they're enjoying what goes with the coffee, which is a time just to relax. It's their time, my time. So there's a meditative state. So what can, I've given you examples there. So what about us? What tips can I give for you? Because I did make a big promise in the promotional material for this show that by the end of it, you would be able to find ways of being more mindful and of learning at least the basics of meditation. And I believe that to be true. So now it's time to give you an example. And some of the questions relate to these things, so I'm probably going to be answering these questions as I go along, although at the end of the show, I will go through each question just to make sure that I have addressed the particular point that was mentioned, because they're all fantastic questions. And I've said before, it makes my job so much easier to be able to talk about theoretical stuff and make it very, very practical that people can use in their lives. So here's a little exercise for you right now. Now, obviously, if you're driving, operating machinery, or anything like that, you just listen to this, you don't do it. But if you are in a safe place, then this is what I want you to do. I want you to choose something on your computer screen or something on the wall, anything that you can focus your eyes on. And I want you to look at that right now, and do not take your eyes off it, and do not move your eyes until I tell you to stop. And it won't be very long, so don't worry. We're now going to go, silent for once. Okay, back to the real world. How did that feel? But I do this when I have groups, and people say, well, they come up with all kinds of things. But you see, what this shows us is that so rarely are we ever silent and unmoving for even just a few seconds. I don't know how long we were quiet there for then. I'm guessing it could be 20 seconds. But when I've made guesses like that before, I've been wildly wrong, because the first thing that happens when you get into some kind of zone state is that you lose temporal awareness, awareness of time. So that's another little exercise. And another one that a lot of people practice when they're taught mindfulness is this one. And here's an example. Again, if possible, close your eyes. And it's odd this, because I'm going to start by asking you to visualize things. And I know it sounds crazy when close your eyes. Now I want you to visualize. But the strange thing is, you see, is that when our eyes are closed, we can still visualize. And that's why blind people, even if they've been blind from birth, are great at doing visualization, although they definitely wouldn't call it that. So now just close your eyes for a moment. And I want you to think of 3 things that are going on in your mind that you can put a picture to right now. 3 things that are going on in your mind right now. And the second thing is, I want you to, with your eyes remaining closed, just tune into your listening, just tune into your hearing, and think of 3 different sounds that you can hear. And finally, I want you to focus inwards into your feelings, and 3 things that you can feel. So that's sensory things that you can feel. It might be something on your skin, it might be the way you're sitting, it might be an awareness of your heart beating, who knows, but have a think. 3 feelings. Okay, so how was that? I wonder. It'd be, I always enjoy asking my audience questions like that when we're all together. And what I've found is that everybody has some different insight and perspective. But the thing is, whatever it is, they have changed their perspective and they've gained a new insight. So these are all ways that we can very quickly, if necessary, ground ourselves, bring ourselves into the moment, and it doesn't need to take forever. A very common question that I get asked, in fact, I'm going to leave that because I'm sure I'm going to come to it in one of the questions that's been posted. But if you're doing something that is potentially very stressful or something where you really need to be at the top of your game, these are instant things that you can do almost anywhere, but definitely not when driving a car. But funnily enough, a lot of people, if they're driving a car on their own, and particularly on a motorway where there's not too much to think about or see if it's nighttime, a lot of people go into an altered state then. So they're aware they're driving, but it's unconscious driving. And funnily enough, although I don't recommend this as a way of meditating, they do actually connect to their unconscious mind and get some fresh insights that they otherwise wouldn't have done. Now, I smile when I'm thinking of this bit. I'm coming to the end of my formal bit, then I'll move on to the questions. But it's not only, I said, stare at a point and keep your eyes still. But there's one other bit of the body that might come as a surprise to you that I ask you to keep still as well when you do this. And it is your tongue, because your tongue has a life of its own. You'd be surprised how much it moves when you're not even aware of it. And if you're a very sort of verbal person, then your tongue may well move more than another person who's more of a visual seeing type person. But anyway, just be aware of that when you're doing a meditation. Just check that actually your tongue isn't rolling around inside your mouth. And there's a reason for this. And the reason I smile is that I have a client, and the first time he came to see me, normally my sessions are an hour, and an important part of the session is for the client to talk, and I encourage them to talk about stuff. And I don't have any particular structure, but I just let the consultation go its own way, because anybody who's paid me money and allocated their time to come and see me, they know roughly what it is. Often they think they know exactly what it is, but at the end of the session, we may well have decided that there's something else probably. But this particular person, he actually did talk for pretty much the whole hour. And there was no way that I could interrupt him. I mean, I didn't want to anyway, because he felt this was very important, that he had all of these things he wanted to say. So I just thought, okay, I'm just going to relax. I'm in a good mental state. My client is a little agitated, but as he's talking, I can see he's getting calm and calm. I'm just going to let him go. And we didn't, other than the fact that he felt a lot better at the end of the session, from my point of view, we didn't actually accomplish very much. But I think I probably underestimated how much he'd accomplished on his own, which of course is always going to be the most important thing. But this guy booked another appointment with me, and I thought, I can't have another session like this. We have to actually, be a little more structured in the way we start developing some strategies that's going to help this person move his life forward. And if I couldn't get him to speak, I was actually going to say, please hold your tongue. That's an expression. And of course, it's based on fact, because sometimes people physically did get hold of their own tongue or the other person's tongue, but as a last resort way of quietening things down. Now, I'm really pleased to say that I didn't have to do that, because a lot of the work had been done in the first session. And so we were able to, both of us, have a very good dialogue for that session. And for future ones as well. So there we are. Hold your tongue. So keep your eyes still, but keep your tongue still. Time for some questions. Laura's posted a great question, which she wanted to actually do live on air. I'll come back to that one because it's quite a long one. So I'll start with the quick ones. I'm not saying they're easy. Mello says, is there a specific, more receptive time to meditate? Great question. The answer is, as I've alluded to, you can meditate at any time. But in general, if this is not an emergency meditation, or a particular, stressful thing, or time when you need to be on top of your game, I would recommend the morning. And if you're going to do 2 meditations, I'd do one in the morning and one, when you finish your work or when you're sort of winding down, chilling down after the day. And my personal preference is that I try and meditate pretty much as soon as I'm into my work mode, as soon as I get up. But there's no hard and fast rules. When people talk about meditation, or when people talk about anything, they love to make rules. It's like we're hardwired to do this. And I probably do it myself, but I try not to. And that's why I always go for things that are simple, because in simplicity, there's often truth. People are great at overthinking stuff. So no rules about that, Mello. You can do it whenever you feel like it. I've just told you what I do. Lucy says, what are some good ways to practice meditating when you don't have much time? Well, that was a question I was thinking about a few minutes ago, and I think I've answered it, Lucy, because that's a great question. And you'd be surprised how many people say to me, "Oh, it's all right for you, but I just don't have time in my life to meditate." Well, yeah, you're busy. I'm busy actually as well. But honestly, if we can't afford 10 seconds, and you can actually meditate for 10 seconds, I would recommend longer. But 5 minutes would be a great time to meditate. 10 would be even better. But it doesn't need to be too much longer than that. You do it when you want to. As with all of these things, they start to be a pleasure that you don't want to miss out on. And that's the way it should be. If something doesn't feel right, then either you're not doing it right, or it's just not right for you. Another question. Actually, it's a comment, really. Laura's posted a question, but she's done a comment first. First of all, she says, yeah, happy to do the open mic. She's attended most of these shows, and she particularly liked the barriers to success because she felt she was getting bogged down by the heavy relentlessness of work and trying to achieve a goal. But she found it helpful to just focus on what you're supposed to be doing on a daily basis, and that's the best way to get there. Okay, thanks for that comment, Laura. Really happy. Now, this is the question. I've left it to last because actually I'm going to need my wits about me to answer this one. A kind of question query goes like this. If we are to tap into the subconscious to realize our luck or success, surely we need to know what success means to us. Yes? Well, actually, maybe not. Better come on to that in a minute. Is it health ? Is it a good job ? Is it money ? Is it a relationship ? Well, in our conscious mind, it could be all of those things, or any one of them. But often, you see, what's in our conscious mind is only a symptom, or it's only a tip of an iceberg of stuff that underneath it is way more important. Anyway, let's see how Laura develops this. There have been times for us all when we get the job or goal, but then realize that it is not what makes you happy, or the new people do not fit with your values. That is just so true. If you're very goal-focused, I mean, goals are great as long as you use them the right way and as long as they truly are the inner, authentic goals that you have. But Laura's right. So many people, when they get that dream job, or they buy the dream house, that satisfaction doesn't last very long, and it's replaced by a new one. And a condition that has been greatly researched is that of plastic surgery. People who have plastic surgery who think that it's going to change their life, and very often it doesn't. A while after the operation, they want another bit of plastic surgery because it wasn't really the surgery they wanted. It was something that was missing deeper down, and books have been written about that. Okay, let's go on with this question. At that point, when she was saying, is this the real goal that we wanted? At that point, you question what luck really is, ? Sorry, this is a bit deep and metaphysical. Never anybody apologize for that. I love things that are deep and metaphysical. That's how my days go. But I've been thinking, if we are not sure what it is, then how can we use the subconscious to realize it? Okay, I think that's the last bit of that question is the most, can be the most valuable. You see, my take on this is that we don't need to know. We don't need to know. the unconscious will know, and that will give us nudges in the right direction as long as we are open to it. And when I'm doing therapy with a client, I don't necessarily, if I'm doing Chinese medicine or bioresonance or stuff, I don't focus on their gallbladder or their kidney or anything like that. I look at just doing my best to help the person get their mind, body, and soul, that trinity, mind, body, and soul, all in the right place. Because if they're in the right place, the body will heal itself. And the ancient philosophers knew that, and it's a cornerstone of Chinese medicine, and it's becoming more accepted in Western medicine as well, because, I am a conventionally trained doctor and I haven't thrown away all of that. So it doesn't matter. Again, it's an example of us trying to over-control stuff. Better for us just to go to the flow and trust our body. Our bodies are working all the time. Our heart is pumping all the time. We don't need to think about it. It's better that we don't think about it. It's better that we just, let these things happen. So there we are. Laura, great question. I don't know whether I've answered it or not, and I'm sorry we can't get you on the show, but your time will come for certain. But thanks for being brave and volunteering. So what have we got coming up? I did mention in the last show that another way to connect to the unconscious, the deep unconscious, is hypnosis. Hypnosis is a fascinating subject, and I think that could well be the topic of our next show. And sooner or later, another idea that I've had, which actually only came to me earlier today, is I think we should talk about dreams, because dreams are a way, again, of connecting to the unconscious that I don't think I've ever actually mentioned before, and I should have done. So we're out of time again. Where does the time go? I hope you've enjoyed the show. I do really thank all of you for supporting the channel. If I didn't have support, I wouldn't do it. I love doing it. They're free, and they're going to be free for as far ahead as I can think of. I do post these videos on YouTube as well. My YouTube channel is growing. So everything is moving more or less in the right direction, I hope, if I knew what the right direction was. But all I can say is that I'm enjoying doing it, and I hope you're enjoying watching. So we'll meet again next week. Have a great week in the meantime. Spend a lot of time daydreaming, and may all of your most wonderful dreams come true. So until then, goodbye.